The United Nations Secretariat is one of the 6 major organs of the United Nations: the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the defunct Trusteeship Council, and the International Court of Justice. The Secretariat is the United Nations executive arm. The Secretariat has an important role in setting the agenda for the UN's deliberative and decision-making bodies of the UN, and the implementation of the decision of these bodies. Secretary-General, who is appointed by the General Assembly, is the head of the Secretariat. The strength of Secretariat staff, which is staffed by nationals of member states, has increased from 1,549 in 1949 to 43,747, in 2011. Mandate of the UN Secretariat. The mandate of the Secretariat is a wide one. Dag Hammarskjöld, the United Nations Second Secretary-General, described its power as follows: "The United Nations is what member nations made it, but within the limits set by government action and government cooperation, much depends on what the Secretariat makes it. It has creative capacity. It can introduce new ideas. It can, in proper forms, take initiatives. It can put before member governments findings which will influence their actions. The United Nations Department of Political Affairs, which has a role analogous to a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is a part of the Secretariat. So is the Department of United Nations Peacekeeping Operations. The Secretariat is the main source of economic and political analysis for the General Assembly and Security Council. It administers operations initiated by UN's deliberative organs, operates political missions, it prepares assessments that precede peacekeeping operations, it appoints the heads of peacekeeping operations, it conducts surveys and research, and communicates with non-state actors such as media and non-government organizations. It is responsible for publishing all of the treaties and international agreements. Staffing. The Secretariat has 44,000 international civil servants. Eligibility for civil service is based on a UN-administered examination offered worldwide, in addition to a competitive application process. Qualifications for membership include the highest standards of efficiency, competence, and integrity, according to the UN Charter. Staff members are appointed by the Secretary-General alone and are assigned to the organs of the United Nations. Staff members are appointed on a temporary or permanent basis, under the discretion of the Secretary-General. During staff recruitment, geographical variety is an especially prominent selection factor in order to accurately reflect the scope of member states present in the UN. The Charter states that staff members are responsible only to the organization, and are prohibited from any action or influence that would suggest affiliation with a government or organization outside the UN. Headquartered in New York, the Secretariat functions through duty stations in Addis Ababa, Bangkok, Beirut, Geneva, Nairobi, Santiago and Vienna, in addition to offices all over the world. Status of women in the Secretariat. Representation of women in the United Nations, particularly at managerial and decision-making positions at the D1 level and above, has been a United Nations General Assembly concern and goal since 1970. Since 1984, the UN Secretariat, in order to achieve early gender equality, issued several 5-year OE action plans, including strategic plans, to improve the status of women in the Secretariat. These plans, however, did not have the desired impact, and progress in achieving gender parity remained slow. In December 1994, the UN General Assembly disappointment that its gender equality target were not met, urged the Secretary-General to prioritize the recruitment and promotion of women to reach to 50/50 representation in D1 and above posts by 2000. In February 2004, gender parity target for the Secretariat was once again revised to 2015. In 2009, despite the plans, and GA resolutions, the representation of women in the UN Secretariat remained well below parity at 29.2%. Equals representation of women at decision-making levels equals, the representation of women's in the UN Secretariat, at the D1 level, in 2000, was 30.3%. Instead of increasing, in the next decade, the representation of women in the Secretariat decreased to 26.7% in December 2011. The representation of women in the Secretariat at the D1 level was 27.4%, an increase of 0.6% over a two-year period. At the current rate of progress, it is estimated that gender parity at the D1 to higher levels will be achieved after 102 years. At D2 level, the representation of women in 2011 was 24.4%. Special measures for the achievement of gender equality equals. To ensure that the gender equality target mandated by the General Assembly are met, the Secretariat, in September 1999, promulgated Administrative Instruction, AI, on a OE Special Measures for the Achievement of Gender Equality ST 1999/9, Gender Equality AI echoes the goals of, and is in conformity with, mandate of Articles 8 and 101 of the Charter of the United Nations, and Article 4 Paragraph 1 of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. September 4, 2012, Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary-General of the United Nations, in his annual reports to the General Assembly, titled Improvement of the Status of Women in the United Nations System, stated that the aim of special measures was to ensure gender balance in recruitment and promotion, and that special measures would remain in effect until the OE goal of gender parity is achieved, and sustained for a period of time. The Secretary-General in his recommendations to the GA noted that the United Nations Secretariat, pursuant to the decision of the Policy Committee chaired by the Secretary-General is to ensure the effective implementation of special measures for gender equality. These measures include mandatory selection of equally or better qualified women candidates. Secretary-General. The Secretary-General's duties include helping resolve international disputes, administering peacekeeping operations, organizing international conferences, gathering information on the implementation of Security Council decisions, and consulting with member governments regarding various initiatives. Key Secretariat offices in this area include the Office of the Coordinator of Humanitarian Affairs and the Department of Peacekeeping Operations. The Secretary-General may bring to the attention of the Security Council any matter that, in his or her opinion, may threaten international peace and security. Organization. The Secretariat is divided into offices and departments. The hierarchy within each is as follows: Office, a minimum of 20 high-level professionals under the supervision of a D2 staff member, or in few cases an Assistant Secretary-General or Under Secretary-General. Division, a minimum of 15 high-level professionals under the supervision of a D2 staff member. Service, a minimum of 8 high-level professionals under the supervision of a D1 staff member. Section, a minimum of 4 professionals under the supervisions of a P4 or a P5 staff member. Unit, a minimum of 4 positions under the supervision of a Chief. Offices Executive Office of the Secretary-General, United Nations Office of Internal Oversight Services, United Nations Office of Legal Affairs, United Nations Office for Disarmament Affairs, United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, United Nations Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, United Nations Office of the High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries and Small Island Developing States, United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. Departments United Nations Department of Political Affairs, United Nations Department of Peacekeeping Operations, United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, United Nations Department of Field Support, United Nations Department of Management, United Nations Department of General Assembly and Conference Management, United Nations Department of Public Information, United Nations Department of Safety and Security, United Nations Mine Action Services. Offices away from headquarters United Nations Office at Geneva, United Nations Office at Nairobi, United Nations Office at Vienna. UN Regional Commissions Bangkok, Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, Beirut, Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, Addis Ababa, Economic Commission for Africa, Geneva, Economic Commission for Europe, Santiago, Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean. Reforms. Since its creation, the Secretariat has undergone extensive reforms. On March 21, 2005, Secretary-General Kofi Annan proposed several reforms for the Secretariat. He announced his intentions to appoint a scientific advisor, create a peacebuilding support office, establish a cabinet-style decision-making mechanism, and strengthen the mediation function. He also asked the General Assembly to appropriate funds for a one-time staff buyout. To work with him in revising budgetary and human resources rules. To grant the Secretary-General more managerial authority and flexibility. To strengthen the Office of Internal Oversight Services. And to review all mandates older than 5 years to see whether the activities concerned are still genuinely needed or whether the resources assigned to them can be reallocated in response to new and emerging challenges. See also, Daghamaskja Paragraph LD Library, International Court of Justice. The Four Nations Initiative on Reform of Governance and Management Issues in the UN Secretariat Union Economic and Social Council Union General Assembly Union Headquarters Union Security Council Union Trusteeship Council, United Nations Interpretation Service. References. External links, UN Secretariat, Kofi Annan, Strengthening the United Nations, in Larger Freedom, March 21, 2005. United States Department of State UN Division, the Four Nations Initiative and the implementation of the decision of these bodies. Secretary-General, who is appointed by the General Assembly, is the head of the Secretariat. The strength of Secretariat staff, which is staffed by nationals of member states. The United Nations Secretariat is one of the 6 major organs of the United Nations, the General Assembly. The Security Council. The Economic and Social Council. The defunct Trusteeship Council. Has increased from 1,549 in 1949 to 43,747, in 2011. Mandate of the UN Secretariat. The mandate of the Secretariat is a wide one. Daghamaskja, the United Nations Second Secretary-General, described its power as follows. The United Nations is what member nations made it, but within the limits set by government action and the International Court of Justice. The Secretariat is the United Nations executive arm. The Secretariat has an important role in setting the agenda for the UN's deliberative and decision-making bodies of the UN.